Hello, I'm Leathur Rokk. Welcome to my channel. Today I got very terrible, sad news to break to you. Charlie Kirk is gone. Charlie Kirk is dead. Charlie Kirk, who's the founder of Turning Point U.S.A, and who many of us in the conservative media community have gotten the privilege of meeting at least once. He was at a college event in Utah. I'm sorry, this just happened a couple hours ago, and I'm trying to keep my composure. I wasn't expecting to get such awful news today. I actually was getting ready to do another video on another not pleasant subject, and I was watching Fox News Channel, and they said that he had been shot, and they interviewed different eyewitnesses. And then President Trump, they how they have breaking news, and I was thinking normally I would have uploaded today's video by now, but I wanted to wait and get as much information as possible so that when I was ready to make a video about this, I would have my facts straight and still try to not get overly emotional about this. But it's so hard. You have a man who was married for 4 years to a beautiful wife, Erica. He leaves behind 2 children. He's not running for office. He wasn't a politician. He was somebody who cares about our country, this beautiful country that most of us who were born here, are grateful for being here. He tries to educate people, especially young people, the people that are on college campuses where so many people are being indoctrinated into such anti-American ideologies. And here's somebody that was just talking about things that made logical sense. And because he has love and because he cares, and they just started this question and answer period, and just after the second question got answered, some dirtbag decided to silence a good man with a gun. Now, this video is not any kind of video about gun control. I'm not one of those anti-gun nuts, and it's like, and I don't know if this video is about the growing thing about violence in our culture, and we don't have the facts yet about the who's and the whys. What's really important is a good man is gone. A good man who has spent so much time educating people, meeting people where they are, and in college campuses that are increasingly not the places that are known for free speech, because there's a small but vocal minority that is very loud and very aggressive and can be very intimidating. And with the limited security that most college campuses have, sometimes it's easier to just cancel a speaker if they are deemed too controversial. Now, this shooting happened in Utah, not a state exactly known for its violence. The predominant religion there is Latter-day Saints. The Mormons, they're about as peaceful as they come. And they're also a culture that appreciates things like storing food for in case of natural disasters, and they're people that care about definitely replacing our, they say every woman should have 2.1 or 2.2 children just to reproduce us on Earth, and they definitely, by the virtue of their mostly larger families, they do make sure to, doing the go forth and multiply thing. And anyway, they're good people, and somebody in that crowd shot and killed a good man. I can't believe he's gone. I was doing show notes for this. I had some papers. I might have some details I want to share with you. Let me get them, please. If I can find things. You know what? Okay, let me tell you my personal connection and recollections with Charlie Kirk. They say there's nothing like first-hand accounts. My first experience with Turning Point U.S.A. was during President Trump's first inauguration. Because Atlantic City's not too far from Washington, D.C., it's not too hard to get on a Greyhound and go to Washington when you want to celebrate something, when you want to, like an inauguration of a beloved president, you want to go and celebrate, right? And for Trump's first inauguration, it was much better weather than for his second one. And I noticed, whenever I go to Washington, D.C., I like to go to Lafayette Park, which is the park across the street from the White House. And that's a place where tourists will gather to take pictures in front of the fence of the White House and stuff. And I first saw an organization, a whole bunch of young people, I guess college age, and most of them had baseball caps that said Turning Point USA. And at the time, I was a little bit familiar with Candace Owen, who I think was the second in command, or she was otherwise in a leadership position, but I didn't realize that it was Charlie Kirk who was actually the beginning of the whole thing. And anyway, Turning Point USA goes into college campuses and goes to young people where young people are and just teaches them about how great America is, and about our Constitution, and about our Bill of Rights, and about our founding fathers, and just the truth about American history, and the truth about the Supreme Court, and the truth about the evolution of our decency as a country. And Charlie Kirk, I believe he started this when he was only like 18 or 19. He was really young. How many people are so ambitious and so disciplined and have such love for their country and their fellow man at such a young age? Most people are still in their selfish phase. They're still maybe in their party phase or whatever. We're all learning who we are. And there is somebody who knew at a young age, and he was, he was devout Christian, and just a decent person that believed in certain basic principles of morality, and that make sense. Like when President Trump talks about how his stances are not in any way radical, but they're just common sense. And I think that what Charlie Kirk brought to the conservative movement is his reminding us all that these principles of conservatism, for the most part, and I'm not even anywhere near as conservative as Charlie Kirk is, but they seem to be principles of common sense, such as there are two genders, such as there are men and there are women, and for someone to be a male deciding that he was born in the wrong body, which, okay, may be, his right to do, but if he decides to go and enter into, girls and women's sports, that's a whole different story. Not to mention the impact that we're only now beginning to learn about the impact of hormones and drugs on young children. And so it's people like Charlie Kirk that just challenge people to think, challenge people to question their assumptions. And he was open and accessible, and a family man. Oh man, his wife lucked out on a hottie like him. I'm sorry, I don't mean to lower the tone, I don't mean to be disrespectful, but I'm not blind either. I'm in shock. No, but my personal connection with him, and it's not really a connection, I'm sure he wouldn't pick my face out in the crowd. He deals with thousands of people, all walks of life every day, probably, when he's in public events. But when I went to Washington, D.C. this last time, it was at first for the Trump inauguration and sort of festivities and anything else political, and whatever I could get into the time I was there. And the first thing was this unity rally that was held in the that sports arena called Capital Run Arena, and you have to go through this crowd control thing where you're lined up and you're snaking through. And I was wearing, were wearing all these layers because it was bitter, freezing cold, and I'm wearing like blue fleecy sweatpants with long johns underneath them, this over top of them and that over top of them, blah blah blah, and I don't know how many t-shirts, right? And then I had this, and I made sure that my jackets, I only wore this one leopard puffer jacket that was I could squash under anything, and this red little jacket, because you just really wanted to wear red because I was there for all the MAGA stuff, right? So, but for the clothes I wanted to be the real showstopper is I had this red, white, and blue floor-length gown for all intents and purposes, but it's like, it's large, so it's a really great layering piece. So anyway, that was my outfit, was red, white, and blue, just as befitting celebrating the inauguration of the president that we all love and stuff. So anyway, while I'm snaking through the crowd, trying to get to the arena and go through security and all that stuff, and it took hours, it seems like. And I was also trying to film while I was going through this. He was picking certain people out of the crowd to interview them, and he picked me out of the crowd. And I guess even though I was wearing red, white, blue, and I had a little rhinestone pin on my lapel that said Trump, and I think it should have made it obvious that I was a Trump supporter, but maybe I still look like a liberal. And he asked about how long I was conservative, or whatever, what made me conservative, and I told him 9/11, and I also said a man by the name of Rush Limbaugh, and how my exposure to him and his humor and his intelligence gradually softened my heart and helped with my education, and then of course the events of 9/11 and being forced to relocate from the liberal bastion of Los Angeles back to here in New Jersey, where still full of a bunch of liberals. I at least had a living room and a television, and I discovered this network called Fox News, and I really got to educate myself. And it's been a continuing education as life events happen. And as news like this happens, that now we're having a crisis of free speech and political correctness, and we need to take back our rights to free speech, and yet at what cost? Like, I was thinking about ordering a pro-Bibi Netanyahu shirt off of some site on the internet. And I'm thinking of wearing this, but there are these nut jobs that go out committing random acts against Jewish people and people who they presume are Jewish. And so everybody who feels that they've got a target on their back, they are trying to be invisible. I know a lot of people that are afraid to wear MAGA hats of any kind because they think that they are going to be prone to violence or maybe tempting it. And while occasionally I have gotten a few threats and some arguments and things, for the most part, my gear has either been ignored or I get fist pumps in positive things. And the positive things I get are from people of all walks of life. You might be surprised at the people who are touched by this common sense conservatism, populist, nationalist, whatever you want to call it, message. America first. Why that should even be controversial. Loving of one's country, loving of one's flag, loving of one's Constitution and Bill of Rights. I don't see why this has to be controversial. Wanting women and children to be safe. Why should that be controversial? Wanting to have a police force and wanting to have law and order. Why should this be a partisan issue? And people like Charlie Kirk, they were just trying to educate people. Well, but getting back to the story, I feel kind of like a shithead for admitting this, but for a while I was even joking that Charlie Kirk prevented me from getting in to see Trump one time because I spent so much time doing the interview and talking because, you stick a camera on my face. I feel comfortable with the camera, and I love talking about things I love, and whether that's Trump, whether that's be Rush Limbaugh, whether it be my political evolution, which everybody has their own, I guess you can call it a come to Jesus moment, where if you start making cause and effect relationships in your head, and It's like even my spiritual evolution, which is a subject for another video and another time. But it's interesting how you can not help but react to and respond to the things you've witnessed and the things you've learned and the things you've endured and your observations and what your senses and your brains allow you to deduce about the world and your surroundings. It helps when you're in your political evolution and with your spiritual development also, even though we all come to sometimes different conclusions. Just like if you experience trauma and abuse, some people allow it to destroy them, other people rise above it. Some people allow it to cause them to hurt other people. Some people are inspired to make sure that the last thing they ever want to do is hurt another person because they know what it's like to be traumatized. And I would like to think that that's what we should all aspire to not want to inflict pain on other people unnecessarily. And you want to educate people and you want to listen to each other and, you know, try to find out where each other's coming from. The best way to communicate is to share honestly and to ask sincere questions and be open to hearing somebody else's side of the story and be open to facts, because sometimes facts conflict with feelings and facts don't care about feelings. Facts just are. Sometimes there are cold hard truths in life and in biology, and well, sometimes in life we have to find out for ourselves. But I'm still really in shock about the assassination of Charlie Kirk. And you know, this was a hate crime. It had to have been. And so much of this violence is turning out to be hate crimes. And now I could go on to so many other terrible, disgusting things that have been happening just in the past 24 hours. Or that I've only learned about it in the past 48 hours, but maybe things happened a little bit further ago. Because, you know, news does get suppressed. But, you know, I'm a person that I like to keep. This computer's always on. I got a cell phone here, even though I barely touch it. I got Fox News on right now. And I've got all kinds of tabs open. And I am just processing and sponging off of all the information that I can. Because I wanted to be prepared for this. I really didn't think this video was going to turn out like it did. Because I didn't think today was going to turn out like it was. And now I don't know what to do about this candle. This candle was not a candle that was necessarily praying. This candle was for healing. And as soon as I heard about what happened to him, I got on it right away and I did a little something on my altar. But what do you do when your attempt at healing doesn't work? I mean, I don't see the point in just letting it burn down, and for what? What's done is done. You can't bring people back from the dead. And I know probably a bunch of you are going to beg to differ, but what am I supposed to do? Well, thanks to whoever shot Charlie Kirk, another life, an innocent life, a very important, influential life, was snuffed out. It was not necessary. There is never any excuse to settle a disagreement over politics or philosophy or whatever with violence. There is never any excuse. Now, 2 little kids are going to grow up with only memories and histories of the legend who is their father. Now, there's a grieving young widow. And for what? Whichever scumbag did this, I hope you're satisfied. I'll talk to you guys tomorrow. Charlie Kirk, 31 years old, was shot and killed today in Utah. Rest in peace. I'm sad and I'm angry. How about you?